It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, the disagreements over the grooming gangs inquiry continue. Amid growing calls for the safeguarding minister to resign from the process, we'll hear from one of the survivors working on the inquiry who says it must continue, with Jess Phillips staying in her post.
We've all been let down by all professionals, but this is where is our landmark, an opportunity now to have the biggest inquiry into CSE as a whole, so then we'll never have to have one again.
Also ahead, the only member of the British Armed Forces to ever face prosecution over Bloody Sunday is found not guilty of all charges. Soldier F was accused of murdering 2 and attempting to murder 5 others in Northern Ireland in January 1972. Today, he was cleared in Belfast Crown Court. Plus, the King makes history as he becomes the first British monarch in 5 centuries to pray with the Pope. We'll have the latest from the Vatican. And after one family offers £180,000 a year salary for a tutor to help their 1-year-old get into Eton or Harrow, we'll be asking just how young is too young to start preparing your children for school. All that to come and much more here on the UK Tonight. Good evening. A grooming gang survivor who is part of the national inquiry into the scandal has told this programme the process must continue. Samantha Walker-Roberts, who was abused in Oldham from the age of just 12, has also backed Jess Phillips amid calls for the safeguarding minister to resign. Samantha is one of 5 survivors on the panel who say they'll only remain part of the process if Jess Phillips also stays in post. This comes after the inquiry was left in disarray this week after several other survivors resigned, critical of the government's handling of the process. I sat down with Samantha earlier on and started by asking her what it's like being part of the inquiry.
At the moment, the inquiry has just gone to chaos. It was going quite smoothly. The government had got the NWG to take over. There was committees set up to discuss the scope of the inquiry and around the chairs, but it's just blown up now.
And one of the main reasons is that 4 survivors, victims, however they want to describe themselves, have decided they don't want to take part in it because of, well, some of them don't feel that Jess Phillips, the Minister for Safeguarding, has acted in a way that they're happy with. They also weren't happy with the decision to look at a former police officer, a former social worker, to chair the inquiry. What do you think about that response from those people?
I completely understand and respect their views, and that they have a lot of concerns around the trauma they have suffered over the years, and that this fear is going to be there around professionals, but that we have to have some trust in somebody. And it was proven during the Andy Burnham Assurance Review that Gary Ridgway and Malcolm Newton, who was ex-police officer and ex-social worker, didn't commit any cover-up, and they disclosed information that many people didn't know. And that has led to multiple police operations within Greater Manchester. And that was down to them. And they were, as I said, professionals in that area. So I can understand their fear, but at the same time, there are people who are proving us right that we can trust them.
Do you think this is a case of, and it's all so complicated and it covers Oldham and Rotherham and Rochdale and lots of different places and lots of different experiences of women of different ages as well and different backgrounds. But do you think against that complexity, people are expecting the whole thing to be perfect when it's so complicated and it can only ever be good in some ways, or people trying their best in others?
I think that's the problem. We've never had a national inquiry like this before. We've had the ICTA report, but that was nothing like what we are having now. This is our chance to build something from the ground up, which is survivor-led, where everybody's involved and everybody gets a voice. And we shouldn't be falling apart right now. We should be working together.
You and others have written a letter in support of Jess Phillips. Why have you written in support of Jess Phillips?
Because Jess has only been fair and honest with us. She's told as much as she possibly can within her capacity at the time of when things have been happening. She's provided a lot of support over the phone and in person to a lot of us survivors behind the scenes, which people don't see that of Jess. So I do still want her to be part of this inquiry up until the end.
Because last night on the UK Tonight, we heard from Sammy, who herself is a survivor. We heard from Marlon, whose daughter Scarlett describes herself as a victim, and they both wanted Jess Phillips to resign. They're not happy with how she's gone about things. Can you understand why they feel that way?
I completely understand that they've got fears and problem with people, but when is the time going to come when we've got to bite that bullet and have that trust in somebody? We can't always live in fear.
They also questioned, as we mentioned earlier, who would chair the inquiry. They weren't happy with someone who perhaps previously been a police officer doing that, for example. What are your thoughts on who should be the chair? They did mention, by the way, Sammy mentioned last night, maybe someone from abroad could come and do it, and the only precedent for that is Dame Lowell Goddard, who was a New Zealand judge who came over 10 years ago to chair a child sex abuse inquiry. She eventually quit that, but that was a time when someone from abroad with credibility had come over, at least for a short time, to chair an inquiry. Do you think there's a possibility of someone like that doing it?
I think if they have the background knowledge and capability to understand what we were going through and the complexities around our case, then I'm happy for anybody to be part of it, and anybody to chair it. The problem right now is, what is the scope? Because nobody's understanding what the definition is going to be.
Mm-hmm. I guess the other thing, Samantha, is now the issue itself is toxic, just by the very nature of the abuse that you and other survivors went through. It's become toxic because others are pointing to the ethnicity, the background of people, a lot of people, most of the people in the grooming gangs that we know about, and also the toxicity at the moment of the disagreement, the argument. That's going to make it difficult for someone to want to come forward and do it, isn't it?
It is, but the whole point of this process, which the NWG have done, is provide us with anonymity, reassurance, mental health support, and they've kept that up until now. And to reassure other survivors out there that your anonymity will be kept by the professionals that are taking part in this process.
Samantha, let's just finish off by talking a little bit about your own experiences. And of course, we don't have long enough to do any of it justice. I'm fully aware of that. But the important bit about your experience is how you took matters to a large degree into your own hands to seek justice. Does that inform how you are approaching this process? You want to get stuck in, you want to push forward, you want to do what you can to make things better?
Yeah, I want changes within the system, within all the police and the government and the councils. Everything in them areas need to change. We've all been let down by all professionals, but this is where is our landmark, an opportunity now to have the biggest inquiry into CSE as a whole, so then we never have to have one again.
And just finally, Samantha, I mean, what motivates you to do that? Is it the risk that this could still happen to others, or is indeed still happening to others? We just don't know the true scale. Is it a sense of personal justice you're striving for? Is it all of those things?
It's a bit of everything. Obviously, I was a victim of different types of crimes. So for me, I understand from a victim's perspective how they feel, given whether you've been groomed or you've been kidnapped or however it is. We're all significant, we all mean equal, and we all deserve to have a voice in this inquiry. And I just want them to feel justice and accountability and feel like they've achieved something.
Well, that was survivor Samantha talking to me a bit earlier on. Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer has continued to back his safeguarding minister, as Samantha did, saying he has faith in Jess Phillips to be in charge of setting up the inquiry. Political correspondent Rob Powell joins me now. He's sticking to that, Rob. We heard that at Prime Minister's questions yesterday and still today. Will it be of some support that we've had this letter written by Samantha and others offering the same kind of thing in terms of backing Jess Phillips?
Yeah, absolutely, because that's what people in government have been saying behind the scenes anyway for the last day or so, that the liaison panel of victims and survivors had about 30 people on it. So they were essentially saying that there are differences of views on the panel, and they are pointing towards that letter today as evidence of that, and linking it to the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister's continued backing for Jess Phillips. I think, though, reading through the letter that Samantha and others had written, yes, there's the difference of opinion clearly on Jess Phillips there, But actually, there are some pretty material differences of opinions as well in there about what this inquiry should actually look like. You'll remember one of the key concerns from the people that wrote the letter yesterday was a worry that the inquiry was going to be watered down as they saw it, broadened out, not focused in a sort of laser-like way on grooming gangs, but broadened out to include other types of child sexual exploitation. I think they felt that that would lose the focus and would lead to a situation that they've had in the past where really the questions they want to get at aren't being answered. Now, you read this letter that has gone today, backing Jess Phillips from Samantha and others, and they want a broader approach. They say, as you heard in that interview, that anyone that feels that they have experiences that they want to put across should be allowed to. They also question the size of the liaison panel of victims and survivors as it is. They say it's too big, and they think there weren't enough precautions taken to essentially stop what's happened in the last few days from happening, from things spinning out into the media, from people essentially criticising elements of how the inquiry is set up in the media. They say that has led to some people involved with the panel, some victims and survivors, feeling that they are themselves being silenced because they hold opposing views to some others in that group. So there is clearly some big differences there. It is the job of politics, though, and politicians to be able to bring those two sides together. So now the government says it will be working at pace to consider a new range of candidates to take on the chair position. They say that will take months, so it's not going to be something that happens overnight or even within the next few weeks. But they now need someone that can command the attention and command the confidence of all of the survivors on this panel. And I think finding that person, given some of the political toxicity floating around this, might be difficult. They really have to, I think, go for someone that is beyond reproach, that is completely independent. And I think that is why those ideas you were discussing earlier about someone from overseas are floating in, or maybe someone like a sitting judge or a former judge. But I think as we sit here tonight, it looks like Jess Phillips is more cemented in her position. I think the inquiry as it stands, though, is not necessarily in any better state. And the very hard work to try and get it back on track begins now.
Rob, thank you very much. A former paratrooper accused of murdering 2 civilians in the bloody Sunday shootings in Northern Ireland 53 years ago has been found not guilty. Soldier F, who cannot be identified for legal reasons, was accused of killing James Ray and William McKinney during disorder after a civil rights parade back in January 1972 in Londonderry. 13 people were shot dead by the parachute regiment and at least 15 others were injured during the arrest that day in Derry. Sky's Ireland correspondent Stephen Murphy reports.
Shot mothers in the back. They shot people in the back with no guns.
Emotions ran high.
I ask you, who's the terrorist? I will just leave because I'm obviously not going to get a word in here.
Veterans struggled to make themselves heard after the only British soldier put on trial over Bloody Sunday was acquitted of all charges. Elderly, in ill health and with his identity hidden, former paratrooper Soldier F returns home a free man. A non-jury trial lasting 5 weeks found hearsay evidence that he had murdered 2 men, Willie McKinney and Jim Ray, and attempted to murder 5 others was unreliable. Perjury, the judge said. Victims' relatives came to terms with the ruling.
The families are very disappointed. We had hoped for a better outcome, or at least a small part of the charges would have stood up, but that wasn't to be the case.
In January 1972, 13 people were shot dead and 15 wounded by the parachute regiment at a civil rights demonstration in the Bogside area of Derry. Another person died later. An initial inquiry cleared the soldiers of wrongdoing. It was one of the early defining moments of the Troubles. It's been more than 50 years since the streets around here crackled with the gunfire of Bloody Sunday. But for many here in the city, it remains an open wound, a trauma as relevant today as it was more than half a century ago. You can still find the scars here.
My father was lucky, it went right through and under the wall.
Parachute regiment bullet holes preserved at the site of a cluster of shootings.
This is Glenfada Park, and this is where most of the shootings took place, including my father, who was shot wounded and thanks be to God survived.
The news of her father Patrick's survival was delivered by a priest.
And I remember looking at his trousers and they were just covered in blood. And I kept looking down and thinking, I wonder, is that my daddy's blood? 53 years on, I still remember that day as if it was yesterday.
Willie McKinney was not so lucky, shot down and killed here, along with Jim Ray.
As I went into the house, my mother was sitting surrounded by a lot of people. She's sitting crying. And my father approached me and he said, Willie's dead. At that point, I just fell to my knees and broke down crying.
A lengthy campaign led to a new inquiry. The victims were completely exonerated.
What happened on Bloody Sunday was both unjustified and unjustifiable. It was wrong.
But for others, the trial of Soldier F has been part of a witch hunt of veterans who served in the most difficult of environments, often paying with their lives.
We have always acknowledged that innocent people lost their lives at the hands of the security forces in Northern Ireland. We don't deny that. But the responsibility for that sits squarely at the feet of those who chose illegally to bring weapons of war onto the streets and into the countryside of Northern Ireland. They bear the responsibility for innocent people being killed.
Give the family a bit of space here, will you?
The Bloody Sunday families don't agree, but they accept this is the end of the road. With Labour bringing forward new plans for legacy issues, including a new bill and protections for veterans, this could be the last prosecution we see of a former British soldier for Troubles-era killings. Stephen Murphy, Sky News in Belfast.
Now, King Charles made history today, becoming the first British monarch in 5 centuries to pray with the Pope. His Majesty visited the Vatican with the Queen, where they attended a service in the Sistine Chapel. It comes after a difficult week for the royal family, with allegations continuing to swirl around the King's brother, Prince Andrew. Our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills, has more.
It was a welcome designed to catch our attention for a visit that means everything to the King. Camilla alongside him, wearing a black mantilla as a mark of respect.
Good morning. Welcome.
It's such a pleasure to meet you.
This is the first time they've both met the new Pope. In a sign of the attention and sensitivities around this visit, this clip was shown to the press, with both men commenting on the cameras.
Constant hazard.
Yes.
The camera.
You get used to it.
But was later removed from the official video released by the Vatican.
This is a copy of Pope Francis's message for the World Day of Peace.
Exchanging gifts, they couldn't have got on any better. But while friendship is important, this is also about making history. Inside the Sistine Chapel, they prayed alongside each other. The first time a monarch and pontiff have done that for 500 years, since Henry VIII broke away from the Catholic Church. With King Charles also governor of the Church of England, the optics could not be more significant for relations between the two faiths.
All of us have things in our past that we have to find reconciliation in, personally and institutionally. And that is an important part of growing together. We don't, as it were, lock up the past in a box. We try and embrace it.
But there was a wider message that both King and Pope wanted to share, the two men talking publicly about their passion for the environment, the soft power of the royals and the church on full display. You could see from their interactions that you have two men who have shared interests and passions. But as it was pointed out to me by the head of the Catholic Church for England and Wales, you also have two heads of state who are currently wrestling with issues around historical sexual abuse hanging over their institutions and how best to approach those publicly. Certainly not afraid to meet the public, there will be relief that there were no updates on the Prince Andrew problem.
Of course, it's going to have some degree of overshadowing, but hopefully just the beauty of this event will outshine all of that darkness.
I mean, that's like a little gossip interest, but I think for the Romans, this is a pretty big thing.
And that is where the jeopardy still lies for the royal family, as they try to draw our attention back to important moments like this. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News in Rome.
Now, a leaked letter seen by Sky News warns the government that victims of the post office scandal find compensation schemes worse than the original injustice. The letter was written by the Victims Commissioner Baroness Newlove and sent to the Post Office Minister Blair McDougall early this month. Adele Robinson joins me now for more on this. Hi, Adele. I spoke to quite a few of the victims of the post office scandal a couple of months back, and they were saying exactly this then. They were sick and tired of trying to get what they felt they deserved after the miscarriages of justice they felt.
Yeah, this letter is really an insight, isn't it, once more into how victims of the post office scandal have been feeling for a long time. This letter was actually written on the 3rd of October, just a few days before the Department for Business and Trade set out its response to the post office inquiry. Now, Baroness Newlove, in this letter, outlines, of course, that her role is to provide advice to the government on the treatment of victims of crime. She said that she was asked to join the board of Operation Olympus, which is the police investigation into the Horizon scandal. Now, she said that she met with victims, and it was primarily to listen to concerns about ongoing police investigations, but she said there was very little feedback, actually, about the police investigation. It was all about the actions of the post office in the past and about ongoing compensation schemes. Now, this letter identifies extensive issues. One, of course, the time that it's still taking. Thousands are left still waiting for full and fair redress, although the government has paid out over £1 billion and says that it has increased the amount paid fivefold. The compensation process itself was seen to be as bad, she said, by them, or even as worse, in her words, than the original investigation, prosecution and injustice itself. Overall, there was a damning description of a very adversarial redress process. Remember, there's a pattern among the victims who we've spoken to of very low offers indeed, those first offers as low as 15%, and then over months and years they would seem to go up. An extract here from that letter reads as follows. A frequent complaint was that the initial offer was insultingly low, causing both offence and distress. From the victim perspective, a low offer could be seen as an attempt to diminish their pain and suffering. When raising this with the solicitors, they too said there was a pattern of low initial offers. I recognise this is a frequently used tactic, but I feel it's not appropriate when dealing with traumatised victims. As a tactic, it should be avoided at all costs. The letter also, they raise concerns that some of the current serving sub-postmasters in post office branches at the moment feel apparently under pressure from managers not to pursue claims, and Baroness Newlove was urging the Department for Business and Trade to ensure that this is not the case. The Post Office have released a statement to us in which they said that they continue to actively support all post office colleagues, and particularly those in direct contact with serving sub-postmasters, to encourage them to submit a claim. And they also say that area managers are playing a pivotal role in guiding postmasters on how to do this. And they also said that they would welcome contact with the Victims Commissioner directly so that they can understand more about what they've been told, and to ensure that all of them work together so that current and former postmasters get their claims in as soon as possible. But I think what this shows is, although it was a few weeks ago now, the sentiments from the victims I've spoken to certainly are much the same. These first offers are insultingly low. They would agree with that, and that as yet seems to have not changed.
Yes, absolutely. Adele, thank you very much indeed. Still to come here on the UK Tonight. England water companies handed the lowest ever environmental rating. I'll be discussing that next.
secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Now, England's water companies have collectively been given the lowest environmental rating by the Environment Agency since records began. This comes as the regulator Ofwat has ordered firms to refund more than £260 million to customers for poor performance, and that includes Wales there as well. Joining me now to talk about this is James Wallace, Chief Executive of River Action. James, good to see you. Listen, people will be watching this saying, well, we knew this. We knew they were bad at this, but this bad?
Well, yes, predictably so. Despite the new government's efforts in trying to convince us otherwise, we see another year of devastating results. About 60% worse than the year before, so this is 24 compared to 23. And guess what? Thames Water, Southern Water and Yorkshire Water are the main culprits. They're responsible for 81% of these serious pollution incidents. And on the same day, as you've mentioned, there have been £260 million worth of fines attributed. Interestingly, Thames Water being, again, the main culprit here, £75 million. But if we were to divide that amongst the population of England and Wales, with 62 million people, you're looking at £4 compensation per person. That's not going to matter at all. We have an industry that is in debt to the tune of £70 billion. Fines of this level are going to make no difference at all to their business model.
Those payments, underperformance and overperformance payments, by the way, and just looking at the overperformance, it seems that United Utilities and Severn Trent overperformed. Now, what are they doing that looks good on paper? It may well not be, but what are they doing that the others aren't?
Well, that's a very good question. I haven't been asked that one yet today. I have to quickly think of a good answer because I think it's very hard to determine between all of them. They are all making money out of pollution, one way or another. We have a difference between PLC, so public limited companies, and privately owned ones, which are not traded on the stock market. So if we characterise the difference between, say, for example, Southern Water and Thames Water, and then United Utilities, then you'll see a very different view. And Severn Trent too. They are better performing. However, let's not let them off here. They have a very, very long way to go. So you're talking about the least worst of the worst. If I can bring us to a local example, I was out on the River Kennet, which feeds into the Thames today, at a place called Newbury in West Berkshire. I was with some citizen scientists, and they were devastated to tell me that the treated effluent, so that's the water that comes out having been treated and having the sewage supposedly removed, was so dangerous that if you were to swim in it, you would get sick. And Thames Water's response, they were meant to fix the problem now in 2025, and guess what? They've kicked the can down the road, and it's going to be 2030.
But they're getting plenty of our money by 2030, and I say our because it is all of us, because we all need clean water, obviously. I know we keep talking about this, I mean, you and I have talked about this before, but where can things go and get better quickly?
Well, the Independent Water Commission was announced and then carried through by the new government. The report by Sir John Cunliffe has recommended a complete and utter overhaul of the regulators, which we agree with. They're removing Ofwat and they're going to create a super regulator. However much they do to try and improve those services, the regulation of the water industry, and let's not forget farming and others too, it's not going to make any difference at all as long as we have a government in charge that is saying growth, 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 build, baby, build. In other words, let's deregulate, let's forget about the environment that feeds us, waters us, and so on, and instead prioritise economic growth. Secondly, we need to look at the way that the water industry is financed and owned. Currently, we have a privatisation model that is being proven to be an experiment that has failed again and again and again. We need to see something happen here that radically changes and shifts things. So what we'd like to see is Thames Water. Again, sorry to pick on you, Thames Water, but you are the worst by every measure. Put them into special administration, write off the debt and issue government-backed bonds, which will reduce the costs of borrowing from, say, 10% to 4%, and invest that saved money in fixing up the problems of the past and planning for the future.
So the privatisation model, broken as it is, according to you, there are ways and means of making it work better for us customers who need this clean water?
Well, I don't believe so, no. I'm sorry. I think that we need to, and my colleagues and 82% of the public believe that we need to look at public ownership and making sure there are public benefit models. So if we look just across the channel to Europe, every single nation there, which predominantly have much better water quality and better state of nature and lower risk to health than we do, they have models that embrace that public ownership model and public benefit model.
The problem, James, is they're not trying to buy them back from private ownership, though, are they? And that's the potentially bankrupting element of all of this.
I don't believe so, no. So if you look at the way that the Water Industry Act is constructed and the powers under special administration, the Secretary of State, now Emma Reynolds, recently changed from Steve Reed, she has the power to apply to the High Court, assign an administrator, and for that administrator to write off most of the debt at no cost. I'll give you a very simple example. Again, Thames Water. They apparently are worth about £20 billion. However, to put their assets into good working order, it's £23 billion. Do the maths. If you or I owned a house and we tried to sell it with a hole in the roof and we bought it for for £1 million, let's say, we tried to sell it with crap running around the floor, ground floor, and no roof intact, we're not going to get that £1 million back again. It's exactly the same with any asset. If you don't invest in it, then it's not worth anything. We do not owe money to investors. They owe it to us. They've had the money and we should not be going through this all over again. The public purse needs to be protected. We shouldn't be worrying about the NHS or education. They're not going to take money away from that. We should tax the super rich and we should remove and end privatisation.
We're getting slightly off topic here. Appreciate you've got your views and you're entitled to them. But coming back to the pollution, you mentioned there, I mean, there's lots of things there, of course, growth being the agenda of the government. We need more houses if people are going to have somewhere to live, potentially. I mean, I'm sure you've got a point of view on that. But back to the pollution element, the water companies via Water UK, which is their industry body, say that some of that money that we are all being asked to spend more of is filtering through. In any sense that could make a material difference in the coming years?
Well, and with respect, I think this all is very, very deeply interlinked. I can't expect...
I get that.
Yeah. Well, just on that point, though, you mentioned, if we're going to see rapid change, which, of course, we all do want to see, I would love nothing more than the water industry to become heroes rather than villains. However, there needs to be a complete reset, both from a reform point of view at regulation and the ownership and governance of them. And if we can see the money being put to better use, that means having business plans that are stacked up to succeed, that they're backed by investment, and that investment is benign and not ripping us off. So I can't see many of your viewers disagreeing with that belief. What we really need to see then is leadership from this government and not trying to vie up the environment against industry and growth in the economy. They're not. They are compatible, and we need fresh water, healthy rivers, lakes and seas, and that should be our top priority.
James, it certainly is all interlinked, from taxes to house building to clean water and pollution and everything. But we need to be here for an hour to chat through all that stuff. I'm afraid we are to time for the time being, but appreciate you joining us nonetheless. Thank you very much indeed. I just have to say, a Thames Water spokesperson did say today that we know we need to further improve for our customers, communities and the environment, and that is why we've embarked on the largest ever investment programme, delivering the biggest upgrade to our network, they say, in 150 years. That's a statement from Thames Water. Still to come here on the UK Tonight. Resident doctors, formerly junior doctors, announced fresh strikes in November. We'll have more on that with our health correspondent next. And the cool cows helping to fight climate change. Now, doctors in England are to go on strike again next month in their ongoing row over jobs and pay. The British Medical Association announced that resident doctors, who used to be known as junior doctors, will walk out from the 14th to the 19th of November. Sky's health correspondent Ashish Joshi has more on this now.
This is the worst possible news at the worst possible time as far as the Health Secretary is concerned. There would have been talks ongoing between the government and the BMA to avoid any industrial action as we head into the winter months. Flu cases are already on the rise, and when the resident doctors go on strike, it means almost all other areas of the hospital have to grind to a halt. And that means the government's #1 priority, bringing down the elective waiting list, will have to be paused yet again. That list continues to grow despite the government's best efforts. So the Health Secretary will want to get around that negotiating table with the resident doctors and try and stop any more industrial action, because we all know from the past 2 years just how damaging they can be.
On a move aimed at tackling London's housing crisis, the government slashed requirements for affordable homes in the capital. Under the city's mayor's own rules, 35% of new developments had to be affordable housing, but that's now been cut to 20%. Our Deputy Political Editor Sam Coates has been speaking to Mayor Khan and new Housing Secretary Steve Reed. Here's his special report.
A building site that time forgot. One of the many across London counted as started but taken back by nature. New house building at the lowest level in decades. A crisis, but the toughest political choices mean losers as well as winners. And will there be an admission that things were off track?
We've got a housing crisis in London. Nothing like enough new homes being built to buy, to rent, social and affordable. This has been going on for about 3 years, and the previous government chose to stand back and do nothing. What we're announcing today, me and the Mayor of London working together, is a package that is designed to get London building again by lowering the costs for developers so we get spades in the ground and start to build the homes that Londoners need to live in.
They cut in the affordable home requirement, which currently is 35%, now down to 20%. You accept this is big and controversial. Labour MPs are telling me that you and your team are literally warning them not to kick off about this in public. Stephen Coe being very tough about going public with criticism. One Labour MP told me this morning. Are you worried that you might not win the argument?
No, this is a positive announcement. There were only 4,000 starts in London last year for social and affordable housing. That is nothing like the scale of the crisis that we have. 35% of nothing is nothing. We need to make schemes viable for developers so they'll get spades in the ground and start to build them. As a result of the package we're announcing today, we will see more social and affordable homes built in London over the coming years than we've seen in the past few.
Sadiq Khan, what we've just heard from the Secretary of State there is actually really quite a damning indictment of where we are in London, a city that you've been mayor of now for many years. The government target in the first 9 months of this year was 66,000, but there were just 3,200 private starts, according to the analysts Mollier. This just seems dreadful. Whose fault is it?
Well, this is personal to me. I'm somebody who's born and raised on a council estate. A council home changed my family's life for the better. And that's why when I became mayor, I ditched the dodgy definition the previous mayor had. He built very few affordable homes, and those that he did were 80% of market value. But we face a perfect storm post-pandemic. The London Borough of Kensington and Chelsea didn't begin building one home last year. Forget affordable homes, one home. Harrow began building only 20 homes, not council homes, 20 homes overall.
But these rules were introduced by the mayor himself. They were a key aspect of his election campaigns.
Under my new London plan, every development in our city will be expected to include at least 35% genuinely affordable homes.
Do you concede you were wrong?
No, well, today's package of measures, which is a bold package, is temporary, it's short-term, and it's because there's an emergency we face, by the way, across the country.
Something doesn't quite add up. I just want you to have a look at this graph, Sadiq Khan. Now, this is a graph of the number of homes started and the number of homes completed. And you say that you started 25,000 affordable homes in the year before your 2024 re-election. But look at the completions line. And sure, there'll be a lag for building, but in the 7 London boroughs that we've got data for, at least 2,000 of the houses you counted as started being built in 2023 before your re-election are not started today. Can you explain that?
Quite easily. It's the perfect storm that we face. The price of concrete has gone up by more than 50%. The price of steel by more than 40%. In London, 96% of new builds are flats. We know that when it comes to the flats, you need to borrow. Interest rates have been at record levels. What about the impact of Brexit? What about the impact of the 2 staircases that are required on these 96% of homes? That's why construction has begun, but have been completed.
You have been talking about starts as if that led to completions. We've been to Ealing today to look at sites. Almost 1,000 homes in that borough alone haven't started, even though you were pointing out to the fact that they had started before the re-election bid. Have you been completely honest?
Let me be quite clear. Record numbers of council homes been built in London since the 1970s, records broken. Record numbers of homes completed in London, never seen since the 1930s. More completions of council homes, any year since records began in 2023, 2024.
Final question to the Secretary of State. Are you ready for the uproar that this is going to cause? There are 13,000 people rough sleeping in London in the last year. It's a record high, a 10% increase on the year before. Nearly 90,000 children are living in temporary accommodation. Are you sure that this package watering down requirements on house builders is the sort of thing Labour should be doing?
The effect of the package we're announcing today is that we will see more social and affordable homes built. That means we can get people off the streets. We can start to tackle the national scandal of temporary accommodation. It's not temporary at all. That's because this country has not been building, not because of the Mayor of London, but because of the inaction of the previous Conservative government. They under-resourced the building safety regulator. They didn't support house builders when they started to see the decline nationally, not just in London, 3 years ago. What the Mayor of London and I are doing today is announcing a package that will get spades in the ground in London so we can build the homes of every tenure for private rent, for people to buy and for social and council housing that we need to solve the housing crisis across this city.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, for decades, cows and their burps have been significant contributors to the UK's greenhouse gas emissions, believe it or not. But now scientists think they've found a solution. A groundbreaking breeding programme has been underway in Scotland and is proving so successful that the amount of methane they produce could fall by 40% in 20 years. Our science correspondent Thomas Moore has been having a look.
They're called the cool cows, bred to reduce global warming. Like all calves, they belch and break wind, releasing methane, a powerful greenhouse gas produced in their stomachs as they digest food. But a special hood that measures the gas in the breath of individual animals as they eat shows some emit less than others. And by choosing them to breed, the next generation produces even less.
It's permanent and cumulative is what we call it. So once you've got an animal that produces less methane, she produces less for life. And when you mate her to a lower methane-producing bull, her offspring produce even less than she did. And you just keep going on and on and on, and over 20 years, you can reduce it by 40%.
IVF, combined with a new DNA test that predicts which animals are best to breed from, could speed up the shift to a more methane-efficient herd. Agriculture accounts for more than 10% of the UK's greenhouse gas emissions, and the country's 9 million cows and calves are a major source.
Reducing methane would be a quick win for climate change. It's much more damaging than carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, but it breaks down much more quickly too. And that's why these cattle could be so important for UK agriculture as it strives for net zero.
Oh, this is very nice, thank you. Oh, rice underneath.
But food sustainability researchers say methane in cow burps is only part of the story. It's in the manure as well.
Yes, let's make things more efficient if we can, because I don't think an entirely vegan world is A, feasible, B, particularly desirable. And so that can be part of the mix, which just absolutely must not be used as a smokescreen for shifting to more plant-based diets. The most effective way to reduce methane from cows is to farm fewer cows.
There has been a sharp drop in the amount of beef eaten in Britain, but cheese consumption is growing, and scientists breeding the cool cows say more methane-efficient animals are part of the solution. Thomas Moore, Sky News in Dumfries, Scotland.
Coming up on the UK Tonight, a family in London is offering £180,000 a year salary to get their one-year-old ready for a school like Eton or Harrow. I'll be asking, how young is too young to start preparing your children for school? And a shock defeat for Aston Villa in the Europa League. The sport is on the way next as well.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. Sky News, the full story first.
I'm Martin Brunt and I'm Sky's crime correspondent.
I'm David Blevins and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace.
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Tell us who you're looking for.
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shots rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast. Go ahead, back white jacket.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
No, he did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy. Thank you.
Leicester is on its knees.
They've ripped the soul out of my factory and there's nothing left.
It is eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
There's overcrowding. It's not a new thing.
It's rough.
There's nothing to hide. Why aren't international journalists allowed in?
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation.
Iran retaliates for the US attacks.
Founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor. We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
OK, time now for the sport. Here's James.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
OK. Are you ready? Yep.
35 prisoners were released from Barlini prison this morning, but only one left in a limousine.
Duncan spoke about the letters he's had when he was in prison, and that created a bond between Duncan and Everton.
It's not just words. I love them, and I'll always love them.
It's the story which has gripped Merseyside. Walter Smith's future on the line. The Everton boss apparently close to quitting over the multi-million-pound sale of captain Duncan Ferguson to Newcastle.
We were under pressure from the bank to get the overdraft down.
It upset me. You try to move on. It's not easy for me. I couldn't rub off my tattoo, could I?
The fans adore him. Then all of a sudden, a crash bang wallop, he's playing with the striped shirt on.
A fan had came into the training ground, burst into reception, sat herself on a seat and refused to move until Duncan Ferguson was re-signed.
It was a bit of shock once your club doesn't want you. Really, it's inevitable you've got to move, haven't you?
Signing for Rangers, Duncan.
It's brilliant.
It's like new. Duncan.
I knew that when I signed for Rangers, that was explained to me that really it probably was a year too early for me, but because I was wanting to move away from Dundee United, Walter decided to sign me probably a year too early. He wanted to sign me really a year later. It was a bit early for me to break in.
Probably the best kid in Scotland at the time now. He broke into Dundee United team very early, established himself. The Walt was building for the future and building a team.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Thank you, James. Now, how do you turn a one-year-old boy into the perfect English gentleman? For one anonymous North London family, the answer involves trips to Lord's cricket ground, the theatre, rowing club, rugby. A job ad posted online says they're offering £180,000 a year salary to an exceptional and experienced tutor who can prepare their toddler, they may not even be toddling yet, by the way, for Eton, Harrow or St Paul's, schools like that. Well, let's speak to Sue Atkins, the author of Parenting Made Easy, for more on this. Now, Sue, this job ad has gone viral. It's pretty lengthy, asks a lot, expects a lot. What do you think?
Well, childhood shouldn't be a race, should it really? And hothousing a child says more really about the parents than it does about the child. And also, that job description, why aren't the parents sort of playing with them, reading to them, taking them to activities when they're a bit older? As you said, if they're only one, they're probably not even walking yet. And the pressure that little one will feel is, you know, a bit concerning, because it's like being in a pressure cooker, isn't it, really? And you never know where your child is going to find an interest or a hobby, but really they take their lead from you. So playing with them is the real way to encourage them.
I know psychologists who specialise in infant development talk about being led by the child. If the child shows an interest, help them develop that interest. Is that the way round? I mean, this could work, though, right? I mean, they could go to Twickenham to see England play rugby and love it, especially if they win.
What, at one? Of course. Playing with the child, reading to them, encouraging them, nurturing them, allowing them to follow their own interests. I mean, play is so important for independence, for sharing, for trusting their own instincts, for taking little risks. There is so much around learning that can't be hot-housed. And the pressure, I mean, I don't know how you measure all of that, really, but it saddens me a little bit to think a child would be under that much pressure rather than just learning through fun, laughter, having a good time with their parents. Children thrive if you ask them good questions, you spend time with them, you nurture them, and you can never say what their hobbies might be or their interests, because if you push anybody, they tend to resist and push back eventually, don't they? And it's not really creating a lifelong learner if you're hothousing them, I don't think.
We're saying hothousing, we don't really know how it's going to pan out, and whoever they get for this is a chunky salary, £180,000. They expect them to have gone to the best schools. Well, it's tempting, it's very tempting. I didn't go to the best schools, though, or the best universities, and that's what they're asking for here. I wonder if they perhaps haven't put up enough money, because people who've gone to Eton and go on to Cambridge tend to command higher salaries than even that, don't they?
You can't guarantee anything in life, can you? You really don't know where a child's interest lies or their hobbies. Yeah. And you really can't say, oh, yes, we will hothouse them until we get them into a certain school. You've got to let them develop at their own pace. Child development really shouldn't be a race, should it?
No, perhaps not. But these are parents, perhaps, and this is playing devil's advocate maybe, but perhaps trying to do the best for their child. They're ultra-high net worth people. They've got a lot of money, probably a lot of things they have to do around the world, who knows what. You can kind of see why people want to invest in getting ahead to a degree. Can you get your head around that a bit?
Well, of course, but you know what, children's? They spell love, T-I-M-E. Spending time with your child is more important than delegating all these other activities to somebody else. And I think that's what motivates a child, is when you show an interest in them, when you spend time with them, when you read to them, eat with them, play with them, don't allow them to have too much time on the screens these days. It's all about finding balance, isn't it, really?
Well, I'm afraid, Sue, we are out of T-I-M-E, but I'm really glad we had some of yours this evening as well. Thank you very much indeed. That was good stuff. Thank you very much indeed for watching. That's all from the UK Tonight. You can catch the highlights on our webpage, and SJ is back on Monday. Bye for now.